Wellesley-Weston Lifetime Learning offers non-credit courses to seniors in the greater Boston area. For more information about WWLL and links to our videos, please go to www.llcourses.org.
Good morning. As we discussed our sessions for the fall, we realized that scams was becoming a bigger issue and one we wanted to address. I got in touch with the Better Business Bureau, who put me in touch with Amy, who is going to address scams this morning. She suggested that you should look at the website, which has useful information for all of us. Amy is responsible for educating the public at large and fostering the business to consumer relationship. She has previously performed in the entertainment department at Walt Disney World Company and earned a Bachelor of Arts degree from Emerson College. So I think we'll all go away this morning with information that will help us survive in this technical world. Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Hi there. Thank you all so much for being here. It's my pleasure to be here. I have been with BBB since 2011. I serve as the Community Relations Manager for the Better Business Bureau. Our office, the office that I am based out of, is located in Marlborough, Massachusetts, so not too far from here. But our office serves all of eastern Massachusetts, all of Maine, all of Vermont, and all of Rhode Island. So on any given day, I'm in any one of these 4 states delivering programs just like this. And I deliver between 175 to 200 programs a year. Essentially every day I'm on the road. The most popular requested topic is our scams and fraud topic, our identity theft topic, our cybersecurity topic, and I tend to joke that I have amazing job security. It's just unfortunate as to the circumstances because these scammers aren't going anywhere. Their tactics are just going to keep evolving and changing, especially as technology is evolving and enhancing. And it's really just about staying up to date on sometimes just what the name of a specific scam is. We are far less likely to fall victim to a scam truly just by educating ourselves in a setting like this. I'm happy to take questions throughout the program, so don't hesitate. We don't need to wait until the end. If there's something that strikes you that you would like an answer to or you're curious about throughout the program, please don't hesitate to raise your hand, and I think Anne is going to walk around with the microphone to make sure that the cameras can pick it up. But I tend to start every program just by mentioning very briefly a little bit about the Better Business Bureau and the nonprofit organization that I represent. A lot of people actually aren't even familiar that the Better Business Bureau is a nonprofit organization. We've been around for 106 years now, and a lot of people are familiar at least with the name BBB. You've heard of us. You've probably utilized our free services after you've had a problem with a product or a service or a business. Most people know to contact us after you've had the issue with a business, and we want people to know that you can continue to utilize us for that. You can contact us after you've had an issue. What you will do is file a formal complaint through us. We will process that. We'll display it on the business's business profile on our website. We reach out to the business on behalf of you, and essentially we help serve as the middleman between the company and the consumer. So if you have an issue and you're filing a formal complaint, we help facilitate the dialogue for you. And so you can contact us after you've had an issue, and we field those phone calls every day, but we really want to encourage people to contact us before you have those issues. You're less likely to have an issue with a business if you take a little bit of time to do a little bit of research on the front end of things, and that's where we would come into play. We have a database of over 5 million businesses that have been rated and reviewed and growing, 5 million and growing, 5 million businesses within our database. On the handout, we have our website, bbb.org. We have our email address, info@boston.bbb.org. link, and we have our phone number. If you're not a computer person, that's okay. If you're going to utilize the phone number because of that, I recommend contacting between the hours of 9 to 3, Monday through Friday, so you can speak to one of our customer care specialists. They're incredible. They're not allowed to take lunch breaks together, so there's always someone there to answer the phone. And it could be a question about a business. It could be a question about a charity organization. It could be a question about something that we're touching upon today in regards to scams. And as I mentioned, I have pretty good job security because there are going to be many, many things that we talk about today in the realm of scams and identity theft, but tomorrow something new will pop up, and the next day something new will pop up. So don't hesitate. If you're receiving phone calls or emails or text messages or letters, and you're curious about what it might mean, if it's legitimate and maybe where to turn, don't hesitate to contact us via our website, our email address, or our phone number, and we'll be able to assist you in some way, maybe to help decipher if the letter's legitimate or the phone call was from a real business. And if for some reason we don't have the answer, although we are a nonprofit, like I mentioned, we work very, very closely with government agencies like the Attorney General's Office, the Federal Trade Commission, the FBI, the IRS, the local police, the state police, the Massachusetts Office of Consumer Affairs. We're always sharing information with one another. And so if we don't have the answer, we'll always point you in the appropriate direction. And in regards to sharing information, one of the ways in which we do that is via our scam tracker, and this is an incredible tool. So we have a direct link to our scam tracker website, a portion of our website. So this works, this serves a dual purpose. One, it allows us, if we have received a phone call or an email or a text message or a letter that we want to report via our scam tracker, you can do that. It's very, very easy to do that. And every piece of information that we take in from everyone that's reporting what you're experiencing via our scam tracker, we share with the Federal Trade Commission. And they are the ones that would be able to then take legal action and work with the authorities to hopefully crack down on where some of these scammers are coming from, and hopefully diminish them. We also have direct contact information for the Federal Trade Commission on the handout. And I'll go through all of this, as we get into the program as well. But just to mention that, and also for the scam tracker, the reason it serves a dual purpose is because it's a place where you can go, where we can go to report what we're experiencing, but it also serves a purpose where we can go if we're just curious about what is happening around us as well. We don't have to go just to report, we can go to view and to see. And as of 3 weeks ago or so, I had checked our scam tracker, and as of January 1st, 2018, there were already 35,856 scams reported via our scam tracker. And you can search both locally and nationally via our scam tracker, and it's just such an incredible resource tool. Even if you're just curious about, again, a text message you've received you want to know is legitimate or something like that. So don't hesitate to visit our scam tracker. Beyond the businesses that we have information on our website, like I mentioned, or within our database, I mentioned we have information on charity organizations. Just as we should be researching the businesses before we're choosing who to work with, we really need to be researching the charities to make sure that they're A, legitimate, B, credible, and that they're going to do with the funds that we donate what we think and expect them to do. And then again, everything in regards to scams. And I'm going to jump right into that, but I'm happy to answer any. Oh, I already see there's going to be a question. That's perfect. There's a question right up here. Thank you. If you'd like, I could handle the microphone as well. Right in the middle.
How long does it take for you to vet when someone submits a scam online? If I were to put something online, how long does it take for the Better Business Bureau to vet that, to make sure it's accurate?
That's a good question. So typically we have about a 24-hour turnaround in regards to things like that. It certainly depends on the time of day that you would be reporting something, but there are specific individuals in our office that are focused just on our scam tracker, and just our customer care specialists that are there to answer calls about particular businesses or charities and things like that. So there's typically about a 24-hour turnaround in regards to that. Any other questions BBB related, please? This is a perfect place to start the program, too. There's a question about the Do Not Call registry.
Okay.
I've been on the do not call list
Sure.
for years, but get so many spam, and it even says spam in the window. And so I got something in the mail recently and said, if you want to be on the do not call list, and I thought, well, maybe my original call was so long ago that they've dropped me off. So I dialed the number and it said, you were already on. So why am I still receiving, 5 or 6, 7 calls a day?
Sure. I start every program with the phone scams, and I'm very often asked just about the Do Not Call registry alone, whose contact information we do have on the handout, the website and the phone number. The Do Not Call registry has been around for decades, I think, if we really think about it, at least 20 years. And most of us are already registered, and at this point, if you're registered, it used to be that if you registered, you sort of had to resubmit your phone number, I think, every few years. At this point, once you're registered, you're good to go. But what we need to remember in regards to the Do Not Call registry is that it was established years ago to prohibit legitimate businesses from being able to contact us and solicit. And what's happening now, and this is a major part of the program that we'll get into, is that most of the calls that are coming in are not from legitimate businesses. They're from scammers utilizing the #1 scam tactic today, known as an imposter scam. And they're impersonating legitimate businesses like our electric company, our phone provider, our cable provider, our banks, our credit card provider, all of these specific entities that we typically use. And I'll get into a moment why they utilize a tactic like that. But it's tricky because we're registered with the Do Not Call registry and we're still receiving calls. So there are a few things that we can do in regards to the Do Not Call registry in particular. If we know that we're registered with the Do Not Call registry, and I encourage people, contact the phone number and just double check that your number is listed. And if you're still receiving calls after that, any piece of information that you can write down, whether it's the phone number alone on the caller ID screen, and we'll get into that and why that may not be as reliable as it once was anymore, but write it down anyway, or write down if you're answering the phone, if they say that they're from a particular business, write down the name of the business, and contact the Do Not Call registry and say, look, I'm on your list, and I'm still getting calls from these particular businesses. And they will be able to say, you know what? That is a real business, and they're not supposed to be calling you. And they will then go and contact that business and confront them and tell them to adhere to their list. The problem is if the Do Not Call registry doesn't know that the calls are going out to individuals, they don't know to contact the businesses to tell them to stop. It's sort of like the Do Not Call, the Better Business Bureau, if you think about it. If there's a roofer that's gone around and ruined 10 homeowners' roofs, and none of the homeowners have called to report it to the BBB, we have no way of knowing that there's a terribly unethical business going around. We rely on the individuals in the communities that are experiencing these things to let us know, and the Do Not Call registry works the same way. So don't hesitate to call them, because the other side of the coin is that 9 times out of 10, they're probably going to say, we apologize that you're receiving these calls, but unfortunately, it's not coming from a real business. It's coming from a scammer. Most of the calls that we get nowadays are not coming from legitimate businesses and organizations. They're coming from scammers impersonating. And it doesn't help in any way in regards to how often our phone's ringing, but I think it sheds a little bit of light in regards to the certain tools that we can utilize, like something like the Do Not Call registry in particular. So although it may not crack down on as many calls as we'd prefer, I tend to say, you know what, it's worth it, because it's a free entity as well, the Do Not Call registry. I think it's worth registering. If you typically receive 10 calls a day and it can cut it down to 9, I think the Do Not Call registry is worth it in that aspect. But it's not going to do anything to stop scam calls. There are a few tools that we can utilize, or one tool in particular that we recommend, and it's on the bottom right-hand corner of the handout. It's called nomorobo.com. It's spelled exactly how it sounds, NOMORO. WELLSLEYWeston.com. They do not have a phone number. It is just a website. If you don't have a computer or internet access on your phone, a lot of times the councils on aging and senior centers will allow you to utilize their systems, or they'll log in for you, or libraries, but it's worth it. It is free to register your landline. They charge $1.99 for cell phones right now. The last I checked the website, they had like a $19.99 deal, so you saved $4 or 2 months if you paid for a year up front. But it's $1.99 a year for your cell phone. But I recommend just starting with your landline. If that's where you receive most of your scammy calls, register your landline. And all they're asking for is your phone number. They're not going to ask you for a name or anything else, so that's a really good sign as well. If you have to sign up for things and you have to give them a lot of information, red flags would go waving. So Nomo Robo should only be asking for your phone number. I have met many people who have already registered with Nomo Robo and said that it has significantly cut down the number of calls that they receive. What happens with Nomo Robo is once you're registered, your phone will still ring, but it will only ring once if it's an automated, computerized call. This is what Nomo Robo does, and it is the only tool out there that not only will stop legitimate telemarketers from being able to get past that first ring, it is the only tool that will stop any type of scam call. Because once you're registered, your phone doesn't differentiate whether or not the call coming in is from a real business or a scammer. It's just reading that it's automated, and it will hang up for you after that first ring. It's worth it. We recommend that if you're going to answer the phone anyway, wait until the second or third or fourth ring as it is, because most scammers tend to hang up after the first or second. But in regards to Nomo Robo, it will ring once and it will hang up for you. And what we really recommend beyond anything is if we can resist, let the phone ring anyway and let your answering machine pick it up for a multitude of reasons. The less we answer, the less likely the calls will continue. We have to believe that that is the best way to combat how often our phone is ringing nowadays. And there are a few tried and true reasons to this. Number one, if we answer the phone, we are alerting the caller that they have reached an active working number that has a human on the other end of it. And if we answer today at 2 o'clock, maybe tomorrow at 2 o'clock we'll answer again, or at 3 o'clock, or at 4. And not only will that particular person, an individual, that scammer that has called you on that day where you answered, not only will they continue to call you day in and day out because they know that they're more likely to have someone answer if they dial your number, they sell our information, and they're selling our information to more and more and more scammers, and that's why we're inundated. Even if we don't give any information away, and most of us are savvy enough at this point that even if we do answer the phone, we're not giving away any what we think are crucial pieces of information. But believe it or not, even just answering the phone, that scammer makes a bit of money off of us. And then if they can gather some more information, they'll make a little bit more. If they can confirm our first name, they'll make a little bit more money. If they can confirm our last name, they'll make a little bit more. If they can confirm our address. And we know that scammers and identity thieves, they want the big pieces of information. They want our social security information. They want our credit card information, our bank account. That's what we assume that they're looking for, because that's how they're going to be able to access our funds or our identities. But truthfully, they're willing to make any bit of money that they can off of our information. And believe it or not, even small pieces of information that we don't realize can cause a lot of damage does in the long run, and even something as simple as answering the phone. And sometimes if you realize you answer the phone, or we answer the phone, and we don't even realize we give information away. We answer and say, hello, and they say, Nancy, and we say, yeah, and they're like, check. That person's name is Nancy. It's so simple. And the reason that these scammers can make money off of all of these little pieces of information is because then every scammer that calls after that, that's purchased that information or has obtained that information, can now make the conversation and the call that much more realistic and personal, and the dialogue can be that much more natural. So as opposed to years ago where we would answer the phone and we'd say hello hello, and they would say, who's this? And we'd say, well, who's this? You called me. That doesn't have to happen anymore. Now they know our name, now they know our address, and they know, the companies that we use. Sometimes we answer the phone and we think we're being savvy, and sometimes we are, but we'll answer and they'll say, oh, I'm calling on behalf of, let's say they say, I'm calling on behalf of Sprint, and we want to change our policies for next year so we can give you a better deal than you're already getting. And then you say, well, I don't even have Sprint, I have Verizon, and you hang up. And now they say, okay, well, this phone number has Verizon and not Sprint. And then the next time they call, they can say, hi, Miss Smith, I'm calling on behalf of Verizon, and da-da-da-da, and they can make it more and more personal. And that's what these scammers want to do. They want to utilize that imposter scam that I mentioned earlier, and they want to impersonate legitimate businesses. We used to receive calls, and sometimes we still can, from people saying, oh, you won a free cruise, you won $20,000, you won the Irish lottery, you owe $50 million. And big red flags would go waving, I think. They were pretty outlandish. No one's winning a free vacation, no one's winning a free timeshare. Those things aren't happening. We're savvy to that at this point. And so the scammers aren't wasting their time. It's more lucrative for them to contact us and pretend to be a representative from a real business that we may regularly associate ourselves, especially something like our bank, for example, or our credit card company. Our banks and credit card companies are very closely monitoring our accounts now because of how prevalent scams and fraud and identity theft is. And because of that, they may contact us if they notice something unusual within our spending pattern. It's natural for our bank or credit card company to make a call like that. And the scammers are smart. I use this term loosely, but I use it all the time. They're smart. They piggyback off of that. So they contact us and they pretend to be our bank, and they say that they notice a little discrepancy. They're not going to say anything too outlandish that we may not believe, or that would send the red flags waving. They'll say they noticed, one charge at one particular time at one particular store, and they'll say, we just want to verify that that was you and that someone else didn't get a hold of your card. And they'll say something that they know we'll say no to, and they'll say, but you know what? We had a feeling it wasn't you. Don't worry about it. We're going to cancel that charge. We'll cancel the transaction. You won't be charged for it. But we are going to also cancel the card. We'll send you a new one. You'll receive it within 5 to 10 business days. Can you just confirm that you're still at 1 Main Street in Wellesley, Massachusetts? Perfect. Could you also just confirm your account number for me? And by the time they ask you for the big piece of information, which is a big piece of information, they have already given you so much and revealed so much about yourself, it's natural to assume that they were who they said that they were. But it's really, really tough because we can never be even just 1 tiny % sure that the person on the other end is who they say they are unless we have initiated the call. And I say this in all sincerity, every single call that we engage in needs to be initiated by us, 100% of the calls. And that's why we recommend if your phone's ringing, let it go to your answering machine, let your answering machine pick it up. If it's someone that needs you or knows you, they'll leave you a message. Scammers very rarely do. They'll leave you a message, and you can choose to call that entity back at your leisure. Make sure that if you do, you're not necessarily calling the number back that they left in the message, because there are some scammers who will leave a message pretending to be from a real bank or a real organization, and they'll leave a number for you to call back. And the number could, and we assume, well, a scammer wouldn't leave a real number, and sometimes they do. And then we can sort of, fumble that way. Anytime someone leaves a message, just take a little bit of extra time to verify the correct phone number to contact, to call back. Please.
I have a new, can you hear me? I have a new dentist, and I happened to see him this week. And the next day, I got a call from someone wanting to sell me dental insurance or something. And I thought, well, are they selling my name to something? Or why is this, was it a coincidence? What? I don't know.
It very well could. An instance like that, it sounds like it couldn't be coincidental, but it very well could be. And it could be that, I don't know. Specifically, I'm not sure. It very well could be that somebody hacked into your dentist's office files, and it just happened to be the day after that you had your appointment. Believe it or not, these things happen so frequently. I think the timing of it is just so random sometimes that it is just completely ironic and coincidental. But it doesn't mean that there wasn't some hacker that hacked into the account, or that the office itself isn't selling information. Legitimate businesses buy and sell our information just as scammers do. We need to make sure that when we're working with specific businesses, we're asking them, what do you do with my personal information that's on file? Do you sell my information? Do you distribute my information? And a lot of businesses don't hide it either. We just don't know to ask what their policies are. A lot of charities don't hide it. We think they do. We think it's in little print, and it's not. It's in big, bold print right on their policy page. We just don't think to go and look at their policy page or ask them what it is. So it's very possible that our information is being bought and sold. Please.
Yes, as a follow-up of an earlier question, but we get a lot of incoming calls that are labeled spam on the caller ID. I'm wondering how they do that and whether every call that is labeled spam is actually spam.
Sure. I think I may have missed the last bit of your question.
Is every call we get that's labeled spam actually spam?
Yes.
There's no false positives.
So, our caller ID, there's a few different things to touch upon in regards to the caller ID and the phones that say something is spam and some that don't. So caller ID in general is a really great tool, and I encourage people to still utilize it. We have them built in on our cell phones, which is fantastic. We should have them for our landlines just because, but we can't necessarily rely on them because most of the calls that come in are not from within the US. Most of the calls that are coming in are from Jamaica and Dubai and China and Toronto and Russia, and they're coming from all over the world. But these scammers, again, are savvy, and they know that if they call us and we look at our caller ID screen and it says Jamaica, we're not very likely to answer the phone. But if we look at our caller ID screen and it says California or Colorado or Kentucky, we're at least a little bit more likely because they're getting a little bit closer to us. At least it's within the US. Or if we look at our caller ID screen and it says somewhere in Massachusetts, we're even more likely to answer. If we look and it says Wellesley, we're even more likely to answer. If we look and it says our own phone number, we're much more likely to answer. These scammers know that the closer they get to us in regards to the caller ID screen, the more likely it is that we'll answer. And that's why they are scrambling the numbers that appear on our caller ID screen. Sometimes they're purchasing devices that scramble numbers for them, and sometimes they're just downloading free apps on their smartphones. Anyone with a smartphone can do it. Free apps. I was at a conference not long ago, maybe about a year ago at this point, and a member of the Attorney General's office stood up. We were part of a panel, and he asked an individual in the front row for her phone number and the phone number of someone in her phone without revealing what they were plugged in as on her phone, her cell phone. And she gave him her phone number, and she gave him the number of someone else. And so within 3 minutes, he had downloaded a free app on his phone. He dialed her. It was in a room of about 100 people. He dialed her phone. She looked at her phone, and it said her husband's name at the top of the phone. Within 3 minutes, he downloaded a free app, and he was able to do this. So it's very possible that anybody could do it, let alone these scammers that are coming from outside of the country. So that's why when we look at our caller ID, we can't necessarily rely on it, but it's still worth utilizing. Some phone providers now, in regards to your portion of the question, in regards to sometimes it says spam or scam or something like that, or it'll flash red. Some phone providers have taken it the next step or have successfully been able to take the next step in trying to provide us better security. I would venture to say that most of our phone providers are working towards that, but I know my work phone and my personal cell phone are two different providers, and my work cell phone in particular tends to receive more scammy calls anyway, but on occasion when it rings, it will say spam or scam, and so they're working, they're understanding patterns now, and they're able to read on occasion if something coming in is a potential scam. Most likely it's because they're realizing that it's being patched in from other countries or something like that, as opposed to just a direct call from a direct number, a direct phone. But I really recommend contacting everyone. Contacting, at some point in the next week or so, contact your bank, contact your credit card company, and contact your phone provider and say, what precautions do you already have set in place for me to best protect me from scams and fraud and identity theft? And then find out, is there anything that I can implement with you while I'm on the phone in addition to that to better protect me that's at no cost to me? And then say, is there anything that maybe is an extra cost to me? And then weigh what it is that your provider is providing for you, because every company is different. Every bank provides something different. Every credit card company provides something different, and the same thing with the phone providers. Some are a little bit more up to date than maybe others, or have access to more tools that they're utilizing for us. But I really encourage people, for every one business that's out there, there are dozens of others that do the same thing, and it doesn't, just because we've been with one for a really long time and we're comfortable doesn't mean that they're utilizing as many tools as they can be to protect us. And it's just about contacting and finding out what those tools are. And sometimes our cell phones allow us to block as many numbers as possible. The trouble with blocking is that more likely than not, the scammer that's calling us is not going to call from the same phone number again the next day. They're going to change up the number that appears on our screen. So we can block and block and block, but it doesn't mean that the calls will stop from that, even just that one particular person. And I really want to encourage people, we are not targeted specifically to begin with. I think it's important to keep that in mind, because I think sometimes we feel really, really frustrated because we feel like we're being targeted. And to begin with, we're not. Until we start giving away information, we're really, really not. What happens is these scammers have a list of like 1,000 phone numbers. And on Monday, this particular scammer is going to call everyone on that list and offer them a better interest rate on their credit card. And on Tuesday, they're going to call everyone on that list and say that they're from a charity soliciting for donations. And on Wednesday, they'll try again. And so every day they're going to try something new, because they know that they're more likely to be able to get a variety of different people to sort of give in to what it is that they're trying to sell you that day. I had someone tell me once, well, someone called me and offered me a better interest rate on my credit card, and I told them I don't even have a credit card, so I don't know why they called me. And it's because it's all at random. They're just going to call 1,000 people, and law of averages says most of those people are probably going to have credit cards, and then maybe half of those people will stay on the line an extra 5 seconds, and then half of those people will actually divulge more personal information. So it's more lucrative for these scammers to contact many people and try a variety of different things than to just target one person in particular. And they might hit a wall, eventually. And also, if this scammer is contacting 1,000 people on Monday, and let's just say 500 people answer the phone, what phone numbers do you think they're going to start with on Tuesday when they start making their calls again? They're going to contact the numbers that had somebody answer on the other end. And that's why it's so important for us to resist that urge and to just let the phone ring. And some of the major tactics that they're using now in regards to, or some of the major scam names that they're using. We're all familiar with the IRS one probably at this point, that they're calling and contacting us and pretending to be the IRS. It's tough, because we used to be able to say, the IRS is never going to call you, so hang up the phone. Unfortunately, we can't say that anymore, because as of 2018, the IRS has hired a third-party debt collection agency, administrative company, to make phone calls on behalf of them to collect funds that people have not paid in regards to their taxes. So we can't say that the IRS will never call you. However, it doesn't matter if it's the IRS, if it's a local business, a big business, whoever it is that's saying that they're contacting you, you do not have to divulge any piece of information in that first initial phone call. And the reason that these scammers started to utilize the IRS phone scam, or started to impersonate the IRS, is because they know that the IRS is a big name that would make people nervous if they answered the phone and heard it, and that we were more likely to divulge information in that first initial call. And the truth is, we have time. Even if it really is the IRS, you have time. You would also receive one mailed notification, a second mailed notification, and then you would start to receive phone calls. You're more likely also going to be receiving this if you've purposefully evaded paying your taxes, so I'm sure everyone in this room is okay in that department. But no matter who it is, that's what's so important to know. No matter who it is on the other end, no matter how realistic it is, we just need to hang up, find the appropriate number, and call that entity back. Contact a local IRS office. Contact our office and say, what phone number is legitimate that I can call to verify that it was really the IRS calling me. One of the newest scams is something called the Medicare scam. As most of us know, we're all receiving new Medicare cards, so the Social Security number is being removed, finally, and you will be receiving a new Medicare card. Now, the scam started off by people, scammers, piggybacking off of the fact that we would be receiving new cards. They started to call individuals, and this is when people aren't necessarily targeted specifically, but certain demographics are targeted. So in this instance, they know that they're going to that they're much more likely to get what they're looking for if they contact people over the age of 65 with the Medicare scam than people between the ages of 18 to 35. They just know that they probably don't even know what that is. So they're more likely to get something out of it if they contact people in a certain age demographic. And this would be one of those instances. They're contacting people over the age of 65. They're saying that they're calling on behalf of Medicare, and they're saying, as you know, or you may, if you're aware, you'll be receiving a new Medicare card, and there is a fee to it. We are charging $5. Or they're saying, as you know, they'll be rolled out within the next year and a half, and you're due to receive yours in the next 8 to 10 months. But if you'd like to expedite it, we can move it up. There is a fee for that, though. And people are anxious because they want the Social Security numbers taken off, that they are giving in. And they're also giving in and giving in information, because they're not asking for thousands of dollars or big chunks of money. They're just saying $5, $10, maybe 50 tops. And so we're more likely to give away information because of that. But what the scammers are doing now, they've adapted it. They are now calling because, has anyone in here actually, by show of hands, received their new Medicare card yet? It's sort of a thin piece of paper, right? It's a different texture than it was before. It's not a hard card. And so they caught wind of people complaining about the new card and how flimsy it is. And so now they're calling and saying, I'm calling on behalf of Medicare. We know we've had a lot of feedback from people that are really unhappy with the quality. And we are, that is the card, but we are offering, if people want us to send, if people are looking for a laminated card or would like us to do it for them, send you a card that's of the older quality. There is a $10 fee for that, but we would be more than happy to send that out for you. And people are doing it because the card, they're so unhappy with the card itself. And so again, they're adapting to what it is that's happening. So it's realistic for those of us that have received the card and are unhappy with it and have vocalized how unhappy we are about it. It's realistic that we could potentially receive a call from Medicare updating what it is that they've created. So in any of these instances, again, best thing to do, hang up the phone, find the appropriate number, call Medicare directly, call a local office, whatever it might be, and say, did I just receive a call? This goes for any type of business. And most businesses have a database of who it is that they've contacted. So if you contacted someone and even the next day and said, at 3 o'clock yesterday I had a call from someone saying this, they will know, if it's a real business, they will know that they've contacted you and what the subject is about. So don't hesitate to do that. And it can work twofold. Not only are you going to give yourself peace of mind and knowing that you didn't give any information away to the number that had called you, you're also alerting that entity that there's someone out there making calls on behalf of them and misrepresenting them. That's a really, really big thing to know. Reporting it is the best thing that we can all do to hopefully prevent these calls from continuing to come in as often as they do. Please.
Very simple question.
Sure.
Why did they change the Social Security cards?
Why did Medicare change the Social Security number on your Medicare card?
No, and why did they put it in that, you can't laminate it? There was a reason.
Why is the quality? Yeah. I'm not sure why the quality is what it is, but I know why they took the Social Security number off, and I think most of us can probably understand that it's because identity theft is so much more prevalent now because of how easily accessible our Social Security information is, and they just wanted to have one less way in which scammers could get a hold of it. And it was always ironic, too, right? They said, don't carry around your Social Security card, but make sure you have your Medicare card. So I think they just sort of caught wind to, how absurd of a statement that was. So it's important. And in general, what's happening with technology is that it's so much easier for our information to be taken from us. I don't like to say that people fall for scams. We are falling victim to scams because some of them are so virtually undetectable. There's nothing that we're doing to give away this information intentionally, not intentionally, because we're not thinking clearly. There's something out there called skimming devices. I'm sure most of you have heard of this. If you haven't, they're called skimmers. And these skimmers are placed over where we would swipe our card, whether it's at an ATM machine or a gas station pump or at a cash register. And what it is sometimes it's external, sometimes it's a piece that's implanted right over where we swipe, and they're virtually undetectable because the skimmers are smart and they're not putting a yellow piece on a Bank of America ATM machine that's usually red, white, and blue that's going to really stand out. They're making it red, white, or blue, or gray, and we're swiping our card. And sometimes they're internal. So sometimes the scammers are going inside the gas pump where we would swipe our card. It takes 1.5 minutes for a scammer to get in, implant these cords in these wires, and it will connect to where we swipe. And what happens is these skimmers, once we swipe our card, every piece of that information that we have on that card is sent over to whoever the scammer was that created that planted that device there. So they now have our name and our address and our account information and all of that because we swiped. We didn't do anything wrong. We didn't do anything to cause that. Please.
Could you share with us advice on how to avoid identity theft?
Sure. This is one of the ways in which we can do that in regards to avoiding identity theft. Something as simple as utilizing your credit card versus your debit card more often than not. We really recommend doing away with utilizing your debit as a form of payment and transaction. We should be utilizing our credit cards more than anything. If you don't want to go cold turkey, I understand that. I haven't used my debit card in almost 7 years since I've been with BPB and delivered 30 programs on identity theft a month. But one of the simplest ways we can do that to help prevent it from happening to us, rather, is to start to utilize our credit card. I recommend the big 3, aside from anything online shopping. There should never be a debit card information inserted into the computer, ever, at any time, no matter how secure you think your connection is, no matter how secure you think your computer is. Anything online, always a credit card. But the big 3, if you don't want to go cold turkey and use your credit card for everything, for me, gas stations, restaurants, and grocery stores. Those are the big 3 for me. Some, I think, for obvious reasons, gas stations in particular, it's easier for someone to access a machine and implant a skimming device. And the truth is, we can't control where these skimming devices are going to be found, but we can control whether or not we're using our debit or our credit. And I should say, aside from skimming, where you swipe, there's also shimmers now, where you would insert your chip. So we used to say, use the chip, it's better than the swipe, and it is, but there's something now called a shimmer. So if you implant, there might be something internally that can access your information via your chip. Please. The chip. Yeah, the chip is safer than the swipe, but there's still the possibility that there could be something there. The best thing we can do is to monitor our accounts. And I know that sounds like common sense, and I know we all do it, but we need to really monitor, and this is why. I have a lot of people tell me, no one's coming after me, I don't have any money. It's not about the money, and you're not the only one. It is much more lucrative for these scammers to scam 5,000 people out of $1 each than one person out of $5,000. Because if I look at my bank statement and I see a $5,000 transaction, I'm going to notice, and I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to contact my bank or my credit card company. Not only that, But my bank or credit card company is probably going to notice it before it even makes it onto my statement or my bill, and they're going to contact me because it will be unusual to my spending patterns, and these scammers know that. They'd rather scam 1 million people out of $1 each than one person and hope that that person happens to have $1 million or $5,000. This is a full-time job for them. So they're going to make small transactions and small purchases with our information, $1, $2, $3, and also because not only are we less likely to notice a smaller transaction, but we're less likely to do something about it. How often have you seen a $1 fee or a $2 service charge and said, I cannot remember what that $2 was for, but it's just $2, whatever. If it's there next month, I'll think of it later. And then that person, again, if they put it on 1 million people's statements, they just made a lot of money. And that's how it works. That's why we aren't targeted specifically, at least to start. And the best thing that we can do for ourselves in regards to identity theft is to run, not only to monitor our statements, but to run at least one credit report a year. We have to be running credit reports. On the handout, we have 2 of the 3 major credit bureaus. We have Experian, TransUnion. We did used to have Equifax. We know that there was a big breach last year with Equifax. We're not saying don't use them or that they're not safe. We're just giving it a little bit of time, a little bit of space. But you can receive a free credit report from each of the 3 major credit bureaus every year. You can go directly to each of the 3 major credit bureaus, and we have their websites and phone numbers, or you can visit annualcreditreport.com. It is so important that if we're only going to do one a year, because again, you can receive one a year from each of them. You don't want to do too many, so only do one a year from each of them if that's what you want. And if you're only going to do one a year total, switch off every year and use a different one. So for example, this year, if you're going to choose TransUnion, next year do Experian, the year after do Equifax. Just be very aware that this is important because every credit bureau might have different information on us. And I have a lot of people that say, again, no one's coming after me because I don't have any money. I wish it were that simple. It's not. You're a random target, and if they can get a hold of your information, they're not necessarily looking for money. They just want to be you. They need to take out a license in your name. They need to take out a passport in your name. They want to open up lines of credit that they can't do with whatever information they do or do not have on themselves. And sometimes they will open up lines of credit, and they will pay the credit off. And we never know that it's happening. They do that because they can then sustain that for longer than if they open up lines of credit and they're not paying it off. And the only way for us to know whether or not it's happening is if we're running this credit report. Some of the only ways that we are able to detect if someone has stolen our identity is if we run a credit report. And last year, after that big Equifax breach, and I think it has been about a year now, there was a statistic that said, I think about 6 months later, that only 50% of Americans, there's going to be a question over here, I think, that only 50% of Americans had run a credit report after that breach, and they were saying it was a devastating number because more like 90% of Americans should have run a report because a lot of people weren't thinking that they were affected because they had never directly utilized Equifax. But the truth is, if you took out a car loan at some point or if you took out a mortgage, that provider may have run a credit check on you via Equifax without realizing. Right here to your left.
These companies that will monitor your credit cards and will call you, is that a good safeguard to have?
So there are pros and cons to any external source that you have to give your information to in order for them to protect it. We cannot advocate, the BBB cannot advocate one way or another for a particular business, but we really just encourage people to look into the particular businesses that you're curious about, the monitoring companies that you're curious about. I tend to like to keep things very small and simple, and I start with my bank. That's why I recommend contacting your bank and seeing what precautions they have in place and what extra additions you can add to your current policy with them. For me, the more information I give away, the more likely it is that it can be bought and sold, the more likely it is that it can be hacked. And just because there's a great credible company out there that hasn't had a hack yet doesn't mean that they can't be, and I just prefer to keep my information small. Did you have a follow-up?
But what about if you have multiple accounts or your investments?
Yeah.
I mean,
It's a lot to keep track of, I know. I think it's a personal preference, and I would utilize a financial advisor's guidance on that, I think. That's what I would do. Contact and see.
Who recommended it?
You have what?
A financial advisor.
That recommended a credit monitoring service. Sure. It's just about really knowing that there's always the chance that something could happen to the credit monitoring system that you're trusting your information with. There's a reason that certain entities are hacked into more often or more likely than others, because there's a lot of information in there, right? There's a lot of information on individuals with something like a bank or something like an Equifax or something like, So it's not that they're not reliable and credible, it's just a personal preference on what you're comfortable divulging in regards to your own personal information. Please, yes, I know you've been waiting, sorry.
Since these scammers are illegal, what success do you have in prosecuting or in ascertaining where they're from?
So, a lot of these scammers are caught. We do not hear about it. I like to believe that we don't hear about it as in the public because we don't want to alert the other scammers as to how it was that we sort of found them. If you've ever seen on the news and they say, oh, well, we found these people because of this, and I think, why are you telling the other scammers? Why are you telling the other people how it is that you caught them? They're just going to change their ways. The truth is, most of the scammers, like I mentioned, they're not coming from within the US. It's not impossible to catch them, but it's difficult. There was a conference led by the FBI not long ago. They said it took them 3 years to find one identity thief. 3 years to find one identity thief. And there's hundreds of thousands of identity thieves that are out there. And it's because that identity thief was doing what I mentioned earlier. They were traveling from country to country to country. They were using cell phones that were throwaway cell phones and manipulating the number that appeared on people's screens, and they were contacting us within the US. There was a den in India not long ago where they said they were, I think, 250 people making the IRS phone scam. There were 8 people in Miami not long ago. I think there were 2 people in Dallas that were just caught about a month and a half ago that were making scam calls. So it happens. A lot of the time it's difficult because they're not coming from within the US, so jurisdiction is very difficult, but our authorities over here are working closely. I will say this, they're more likely to catch these individuals with the more information that we're sharing with them via our scam tracker or via the Federal Trade Commission. And I know, because I say this at every program, report it. And even sometimes I think for myself, what is me reporting it going to do this? One individual, what is it really going to do if I do it? And the Federal Trade Commission, not long ago at a round table with some local media and some stakeholders, they said, continue to tell every single person that you come in contact with to report via the Federal Trade Commission as often as they can. Even if you contact them and you just have whether or not the voice on the other end is a male or a female voice, or the name of the business that they say they're representing, or the name of whatever it is that they're looking for, the more information that we are reporting, the more likely it is that they will be able to be found. But they really rely on us to be able to share that. Please.
Why is the debit card more of a risk than a credit card?
Sure. So the debit card is more of a risk than a credit card because it is directly associated with your cash. So if someone gets a hold of your debit card and your credit card at the exact same time, and they make a $1,000 transaction on both, a charge on your credit card, and they withdraw $1,000 from your debit, or they make a purchase for $1,000, and you notice at the exact same time, you contact your bank at the same time, you contact your credit card company at the same time, and you start the dispute process. It takes 2 to 3 months, regardless of whether or not it's the credit card or the debit card. But within that 2 to 3 months, you are not without that money. You are not without those funds if it was your credit card, as opposed to the debit card. You're without that money while it's taking the time to dispute it. It doesn't mean you don't get the money back if it's your debit card. It just takes a bit of time, and you're without those funds. Please. Sorry.
Oh, wait a minute.
I just want to know if you could talk a little more about online shopping and
Sure.
using your credit card online, and how safe that is in terms of identity theft.
Yes, online shopping. The reason we recommend the credit card is for the same reason that we recommend the credit card for essentially all transactions. And that is because if somebody does get a hold of that information. They don't have direct access to your cash. So for example, I had an individual who was connected to the internet, and the phone scams are the most annoying beyond compare, right? The phone's ringing, it's annoying, we don't want to hear it. The computer scams are the most dangerous, and this is why. I had a gentleman who was connected to the internet. He had his firewalls all set up. He had antivirus software, anti-identity theft software. He was on a private Wi-Fi, and he had a pop-up come up on his screen, and it looked like it was from Microsoft. And this goes for emails as well. They can look official, just like the phone calls sound official. These are emails that look like they're coming from real businesses. And this pop-up looked like it was from Microsoft. And he clicked on it because it said, "We detected a virus. Click on this link and we'll scan your computer." He clicked on the link. Seemingly nothing happened, which is typical. No big flashing lights go off saying you clicked on a virus. 2 hours later, he had a phone call from his credit card company asking him if he made a $20,000 purchase in California. This was a program in Rhode Island, so he was 3,000 miles away. It was his credit card. The credit card company caught it. They were able to call him, say, "Was this you? It's very unusual." And he said no. They canceled the transaction. If he just happened to be someone who had $20,000 in his checking account, and the bank didn't think of it as unusual, he would be without that money. It would have been taken immediately. And so what's happening when we click these links, whether it's in a pop-up or an email or on our fraudulent website, it doesn't matter how strong our devices are. It's like we're opening up the doors and saying, "Come on in and take anything you want." And I would much rather have always utilized a credit card for online purchases and transactions and have them access that, because they will have access to anything you've ever typed into the computer, than my debit card information. But it's that simple. And again, the scammer wasn't very smart, because he tried to do something, or she tried to do something almost immediately with such a large sum of money, and the transaction was able to be detected. Did you have a question up the back?
Facebook and Google have been hacked. Short of staying off Facebook, do you have any advice for people?
Change your Facebook password, for sure. Passwords in general, this goes for everything online. Any password that we have, this is where I think it becomes a little bit unbelievable. We have to have a different password for every single account that we have. A different password, and they should be changed every 4 to 6 weeks. More on the 4-week side of things. I know. I can't remember 2 passwords, so I can't imagine having to, remember 15 or 20 or accounts or logins or this. Keep a notebook, write down everything. It's worth it. This is a thing that is annoying, it's time consuming, but it's something that we have to do. We just have to make sure that we're constantly changing our passwords so that if something like a Facebook happens, where there's a hack in a big company like that, we're able to be able to save whatever information that we have by constantly changing our passwords that they then have to try again, And there are people who don't, which is why they're more likely to get hacked than we are. Please. Oh, I think last question, maybe?
Is it safe for an investment company to send money to the bank to deposit it to your account?
So it's circumstantial based on the company, for sure, in regards to anyone electronically sending. There are pros and cons to online banking versus receiving paper statements. It's just about your comfort level, what you know about that company. Ask that company in particular, how do you safeguard me when you're sending my transactions electronically? And to continue to monitor. Really the only thing one of the only things we can do is to monitor our accounts, regardless of who else we have doing it as well, and regardless of how credible our banks and companies are that we're utilizing. We have to monitor. We have to take accountability for that as well.
Well, as you see, she could keep going on a lot longer, but we thank you.
My
very
pleasure.
much. And